Podcast Answer Man, episode number 317.
Entertaining, educational, and encouraging content that makes a difference. This is GSPN.TV. Join the community.
Hi, everyone. Dan Miller here from 48 Days Online Radio. Cliff Ravenscraft has been my podcast answer man ever since he was bold enough to ask me if I wanted to make my podcast a 10 rather than a 6. And from what I'm now hearing all around the world, not only is he my podcast answer man, he is the podcast answer man.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft, and this, my friends, is the podcast about podcasting, helping you take your show to the next level. It doesn't matter if you're a brand new podcaster, if you have been podcasting for many years, or you haven't quite yet recorded that first episode. Hey, there's a Podcasting A to Z course that can help you with that. Anyway, there's something we can all do to take our show, our podcast, and everything we do in life to the next level. And my friends, I am getting ready to take things to the next level here by firing up a brand new podcast with my wife. Later this evening on Thursday, July 18th, my wife and I will sit down and record the very first episode of the Veronica Mars Fan Podcast. Now, I don't know when that will be released. I think we're going to try to get an episode or two recorded prior to our official launch, but once it does get launched, I will make an announcement out there in the social media spaces. So if you're not following me on Twitter or Facebook, you might want to do that. You can find the links over at podcastanswerman.com. But really excited. My wife and I have not done a TV show fan podcast in quite some time, and looking forward to getting back at that with her. Now, real quickly, I want to give you a rundown of what we're going to cover today in this episode. We are going to talk about Google Reader. What to do now? Is RSS feeds, is it the end of RSS feeds? Are we done with this stuff? Are we going to just rely on Twitter and Facebook and our friends to kind of take the most relevant information and bring it to us? Or should we find something to replace Google Reader? What have you done? We're going to talk a little bit about that in our social media segment with my great friend and social media correspondent, Eric J. Fisher. Looking forward to that conversation. Also, Dennis has a question about whether or not he can read entire chapters from Stephen King books, chapter by chapter, in his podcast. And Eric from Tennessee wants to know, how on earth am I getting my audio clips into my recording? We're going to talk about all of that and who knows what else more in this episode. First, though, I want to give you a personal plug of the week. Today, I'm also going to be plugging something that is not a podcast, but that's okay. It's cool. My personal plug of the week this week is a website or an online magazine, if you were to ask Michael Stelzner, but it is called MyKidsAdventures.com. Oh my goodness, MyKidsAdventures.com. I've been watching Michael work on this for some time now. Some of you, if you're wondering who I'm talking about, Michael Stelzner, he's the guy behind SocialMediaExaminer.com, one of the most well-respected sources on the web when it comes to social media news and updates and reports and stuff like that. But anyway, MyKidsAdventures.com is a new project that has recently launched, just last week actually, and it is a website that is designed for busy parents like me, and maybe like you, depending on who's listening there, but especially for me. And the whole idea is, Mike was sitting one day, he went to Disney, I think he went to Disneyland with the kids, or Disney World, but anyway, he went to Disney with the kids, and he was looking back at some photos, and he's like, man, has it really been this long since I brought my kids to this place? And, the whole idea of our kids are growing up so fast and time is flying, and we get stuck working around the clock, and sometimes we lose sight of just how important it is to have adventures with our family. And you have to go check it out. Just go to mykidsadventures.com and just go through and look at the site. And what it does is it gives you different ideas on how you can bring a little adventure into your family life. And it doesn't always have to be, let's go on a family vacation and backpack through the Grand Canyon or something like that. Although I'm sure there'll be some fun things like that. But here is, just to give you an example of some of the articles that are already there, we have Getting Dirty, 5 Fun Composting Projects for Kids. I looked at that one. That one's really not up my alley. How to make an adventure movie with your kids. And so there's an article from Ron, I think it's Vitale. Anyway, he gives you steps on what you can do to actually have a fun movie with your kids. He gives you things like, you need some props, you need a script, you need to choose a filming location, and he gives you some ideas of how you can actually make a fun movie with your family. And that's something that I think I might actually do. How to create a backyard treasure hunt, Minecraft style. Now, I looked over this article one, and it seems to be, more of like just a little, it's a treasure hunt, and it's supposedly Minecraft style. Anyway, you can check out that article. One that looked a little bit interesting was how to create a glow-in-the-dark bowling in your home. And the idea is to take 20-ounce bottles of soda, I guess, those little plastic bottles, and you take the labels off, drop in some glow sticks, and take a basketball and set up some bowling. There's a little bit of further information on the blog post. And then I love this one here, how to have an indoor camping experience. Something just to have some fun with the family. Do something, camp with a big tent made out of blankets or something like that in your living room. Just something to have adventure, something to add a little spice into the family life. That's what you're going to get with My Kids Adventures, and I am so excited about this new project. And I hope that some of you out there who maybe are like me and you come away from work and you're like, what am I going to do this weekend? And sometimes you just want to unplug and stuff, but you would actually do some fun and exciting things with your family if you just had some creative energy to put into it. I know that I've been guilty of putting most of my creative energy into my business and my products and services and stuff like that. And I'm looking for fresh inspiration on what I can do as a dad. How does that apply to you in Podcast Answer Man? Well, I believe it applies because I know that a lot of you out there are entrepreneurs, small business owners, or you work the day job and you're working around the clock. And if you're a busy parent looking for creative ideas, my personal plug of the week, mykidsadventures.com. All right. Starting off today is Dennis, who has a question about doing a podcast about books.
Hey, Cliff. This is Dennis Bowles from Northern Kentucky, and I am calling in for the podcast Answer Man. My question is that I am considering starting a podcast around the books of the Dark Tower series written by Stephen King. And part of the podcast will be centered around the books themselves. Now, I've done some research about this issue, but I've come up a little short in getting some answers. And where do people turn when they need answers on the subject of podcasting? Well, that's you, of course. So my question is, if I want to create a podcast around a book series, and I'm looking to implement readings of some of the books on the podcast, are there any copyright issues that I should be aware of concerning reading a book on a podcast? Basically recording one chapter at a time and releasing them in order from start to finish, along with commentary and side thoughts and things of that nature. But it will be read verbatim from the books. I appreciate any kind of feedback, and thank you for everything that you do.
All right, Dennis, yes, I have some thoughts on this one, and I will tell you, I believe that if you were to read word for word, verbatim, chapter by chapter, even if you were to release them in separate episodes, and even if you were to provide commentary, if you read the entire book in audio form in your podcast, you are absolutely almost 100% certain to receive a letter from a lawyer. I don't think there's really any question whether or not that would happen. I'm almost, I would say that the chances of you getting a letter from an attorney is about 99.99999%. So you definitely want to avoid that. And by the way, where do people go when they have questions about copyright and trademarks and stuff like that when it comes to podcasting? You can ask the podcast answer man here, but I am not going to have all your answers when it comes to those things. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on television, and so I don't give out legal advice. But I can tell you right now, there's little doubt in my mind that I have the answer to this one, and that is if you were to read it word for word, an entire chapter, or even specifically if you were to cover every chapter, you're going to be in a world of hurt when it comes to legal issues. Now, can you read certain excerpts and then provide commentary? I've done that hundreds of times. Now, what are the legal ramifications for that? I have no idea. I did not seek the advice of my own attorneys on that, but Stephanie and I did the Twilight Saga podcast over at twilightsagapodcast.com, and when we were covering each and every book, what we would do is we would read the chapters of the book, and after we read each chapter, we would come and give commentary. We would talk about what we had read, and occasionally we might read one or two lines from certain sections within the chapter. So when it came down to it, out of an entire chapter, we may have read maybe 1% total. Not all together, but 1%, maybe even 2% total of the chapter in little bits and little excerpts, as we would say, I love when Bella said this, and then we might quote 2 or 3 sentences, and then we would have commentary on that. I believe that that might fall under this thing called fair use, but again, the truth is that I am not an attorney, and I cannot give you legal advice. I can tell you that I have done that. I have read excerpts, making sure that it's not too much, and providing tons of commentary around it, and I've never ran into a problem, but that's not to say that you won't either. In reality, if you're going to read anything more than 1 or 2 sentences, I would say you'd probably need permission from the author or publisher, and chances are you may not get it. I have done something in my own personal approach to these things that I don't recommend that you do, and that is that sometimes I'll go and take a little bit of risk with what I share, but I always make sure that I'm doing this in such a way that I'm really not cutting into the profitability or anything like that of anything related to those things. And if you were to create in essence an audio version of that book where I could actually listen to your podcast and I could actually pretty much ingest a majority of the book, if not all of it, by listening to all of your episodes related to it, I could actually do that without the need to ever purchase the book myself or to even purchase the audio book, which your podcast in essence would be a direct competition with. You would be pulling away potential profits from them. So yeah, I think you would run into a big issue. So I think that you could probably pull off a podcast devoted to the book. I think you could cover it chapter by chapter. You could probably pull off, reading a couple sentence, a couple lines from, maybe pulling 2 or 3 lines or 4 or 5 lines out of the chapter and giving commentary on it, but certainly not reading entire chapters, and certainly not reading large passages of chapters. I would never read more than 1 paragraph out of a book. And if you ever went to a second paragraph back to back, I think that that's really pushing some limits there. So hopefully, Dennis, this is helpful to you. Again, I'm not an attorney, so I would say that if you are looking for further information about this, seek the advice of an attorney, but I can almost guarantee you that they will tell you that if you were to read it chapter by chapter, verbatim, you're in trouble. So don't do it. All right, one more question before we get to our social media segment. Eric wants to know how I get those audio clips and other things into my recordings. Eric, take it away.
Hey, Cliff. This is Eric from Nashville, Tennessee, and I am with faithfulwellness.org, the Faithful Wellness Podcast. And I have a question for you regarding our podcast. We record using GarageBand, and I noticed that you are able to incorporate other sounds, other music beds. Basically, you seem to record your podcast pretty much live on the spot. You even bring in other callers, etc., straight into your, I think you probably use Audacity. And I wondered if I can do the same sort of thing with GarageBand, or if I need to switch over to Audacity to be able to do that, and what other software would I need in order to make the switch. Okay? Thanks so much. Look forward to hearing your answer. Bless you.
All right, Eric. Actually, I don't record into software at all. It's not something I enjoy doing. I did this maybe in the first 50 to 100 episodes of my podcast, and after I lost a couple episodes recording into computers, I decided to stop. So the last 3,000 podcast episodes that I've produced have all been recorded into a digital audio recorder that is outside of my computer. And so what I do is I actually have a mixer, and I have my microphone connected to a mixer, and I have all the audio from my mixer going directly into my digital audio recorder. Well, it's very simple for me to then bring audio from my computer or my iPad mini or whatever I want to do. I can bring audio from any other source and bring that into my mixer, and whatever I'm bringing into my mixer then can also be brought into my digital audio recorder as well. So that's how I get everything in live. I'm not doing that in Audacity. In fact, my software of choice personally is Adobe Audition. Now, I only use that for post-production. I do not use that for recording the actual original audio of my show. Is it possible to do those things? You could use a mixer, and you could actually bring the audio out. If you had two sound cards, I suppose, or maybe even with one sound card, you could actually bring the audio from the headphone jack into a mixer, and then you can mix both your audio from your microphone and the audio from the computer, and then send that right back into the computer's line input if it has both an input and output. Some of the new computers only have headphones jacks these days, which is crazy. But then you could actually, you could potentially do that. It's a little convoluted and crazy and stuff like that. I don't recommend it. But I tell you what I will do. If you want to see how I'm creating this podcast right here, right now, and how I've been able to introduce your audio clip and everything else, everything that you heard, all the way from, the Dan Miller intro with the music and me talking over the music and your audio, all of that's getting recorded live into my recording, into my digital audio recorder. And as soon as I'm finished with this, very little post-production at all is necessary. And then I can just save this, tag it, upload it to the web, and get it out there and publish it. If you want to see how I do that, I'm going to give you a website address, podcastanswerman.com/podcast-workflow. Again, that's podcastanswerman.com/podcast-workflow. And if you go there, that's a blog post. It's a video blog post on my site where I give you a step-by-step proven podcast workflow that I've been using for thousands of podcast episodes, and it's how I am producing this show today, with some variations, but it gives you the real deal understanding of the components and how they're all put together. So hopefully that'll help you out, and thanks for the call. All right, my friends, it is that time again for our social media segment, and I am so delighted to speak with our social media correspondent here for Podcast Answer Man and GSPN.TV, Eric J. Fisher. Let's talk RSS.
I'm subscribed. Let's go.
I'm subscribed too. Hey, my friend, I got an email from you yesterday, and I'm going to read it to folks here. It says, "Hey, Cliff, I have to admit I've not been checking my RSS reader, partly due to Google Reader going away and partly due to the fact that I'm changing habits about checking too often in the past." And so basically you're like, what do we talk about tomorrow?
I don't know what's going on in social media, Cliff, because it used to be that I would follow RSS feeds, and now I don't know.
How can I have a social media correspondent who's not out there in the thick of things, hand digging through all these RSS feeds, basically rubbing your fingers to the bone, swiping left and right to see what all's going on in this world?
Yeah, that knowledge work, the grunt work of knowledge work, I tell you.
All right, for those
I let you down, I quit.
No, you can't quit.
Dang it.
So for those who have been living under a rock, let's explain real quickly what RSS is.
Really simple syndication.
And it's what obviously, if you're a podcaster, at least you have an RSS feed. Surprisingly, though, that I don't think you would be shocked to know that there are a ton of podcasters out there who have an RSS feed, and that's how their podcasts work. In fact, technically, you can't have a podcast without an RSS because a podcast, by definition, is media content that is delivered and subscribable via an RSS feed.
Yes.
So, but there are a lot of podcasters out there who have no idea what an RSS feed is. They've either signed up for some kind of some web service where you can just record your audio, upload it, and they say, hey, we'll put you in iTunes. And they've never heard of an RSS feed before. Or they've hired somebody to set it up for them, and they were just not a part of that, setup equation, which is no big deal. But I think it's important for us to understand real quickly what really simple syndication is. And it started out in the blog days where everybody's blogs looked different. People started doing design templates and stuff like that. And I don't know about you, but back in the early blogging days, Eric, I read a lot of different people's blogs. All my friends had blogs, and I wanted to go to them. And for me, what that meant was relying on the bookmark feature. Did you ever do that?
Oh, yeah.
And
that wasn't pretty.
It wasn't pretty at all. I mean, if you think about it, some of my friends would post brand new blog entries, let's just say, once or twice or maybe even 3 or 4 times a week. And then I had friends that, you'd go to their website each day to see if anything was new. And it's been 2 weeks and there's still nothing there. But you're still trying to make yourself go through your list of
going
bookmarks.
back. You had to go back every single day or on a variable time frame to see if they had posted anything.
Exactly. And
you weren't notified.
You'd want to ignore the fact. You'd want to say, they haven't updated anything for a while. Why go back? But then you feel like Jack Shepard from Lost and you say, we got to go back.
Yes.
Only a subset of our community will know what we're talking about there. But anyway, so along came RSS, which basically allowed every single person who has a website or a blog to have a standard set of code that you would put certain information in. So everybody would agree to have tags for date or published date, title, author, content, and a couple other various tags. And this code would look the same for every post for every website. And this allowed certain pieces of software to go and look at people's websites and pull it into a third-party solution or an RSS reader. And because everybody's using the same code, a standard program, one program could look at all the different websites and see them all as the same. And they could just basically see, hey, I looked at this code yesterday and I'm looking at it today and it looks the same. There's nothing new since the last time I checked. And so it doesn't pull anything new in. But then all of a sudden, if it goes to Eric Fisher's blog and sees, oh, there's a new post since the last time I checked, it brings in the new post. And then for me, as an RSS subscriber, let's say Google Reader is the one that I had been using for the longest time, but Google Reader would actually show the title of your most recent post in bold text. It would actually show the other ones in regular text because I'd already clicked on them and read them. But what this allowed me to do is open up Google Reader, and real quickly on the left-hand side, I would have a list of all the blogs. Let's say I'm subscribed to 20 different blogs, and the title of those blogs would be in a list on the left, and anything in bold says, there's something new here. And I'd click on that title, and then it would show me a list of all the posts that are available, and the ones in bold in that list are the ones that I have not read, the articles I haven't read from your blog. And so that's how RSS got started, and it's really the building blocks of podcasting, because basically podcasting does the same thing. We just attach an enclosure or information of where people can find an MP3 file for us to deliver to them, or other media files if you have a different type of podcast. But that's RSS. So Google Reader has been my reader of choice for the web ever since it first came out. Were you a Google Reader user as well?
Yeah, I can't remember when it was I adopted it. I was using other things for a while there, and then at some point said, all right, I'm going to try it, and imported my feeds there, and it just was so much easier to use, so I just stuck with it. It was probably, '07, '08, something like that.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Anyway, I can't remember the stat that I just heard. I think I just heard it in passing. Somebody, I think it was Leo Laporte on This Week in Tech. They were talking about the, Google Reader finally shutting down because they had announced it, back many months ago. And on July 1st, it shut down. And he's like, man, I can't believe that they, did this. But then they started to, somebody threw out the number. He goes, I'm sure there were just tons of people using it. And then somebody on the show said the number of visits it got on a consistent basis. And man, I wish I would have wrote that number down or I looked this up before we recorded, but I remember it sounding ridiculously low. And it wasn't in the millions. It was in the, maybe a couple 100,000 that were using it. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right. I wonder if, then it makes me question, was it just all the tech-savvy people that were using it? Or was it not registering other uses of it, like mobile apps that would connect and use? I mean, it wasn't Google Reader it was using, but it was a skin for it,
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And I'm wondering if us going to other solutions that were basically just tapping into that API, if that was taking away from what they were looking at. You know what? I'm going to pause for just a second. I think I'd like to actually go real quick and do a search on Google to see how many people were using Google Reader, just for the interest of this conversation. So I'm going to pause for just a second. Well, I'll tell you what, we just looked some things up here, and I'm sure that given more time and maybe some folks in our community could look this up and find it a lot easier than what I thought it would be. And let us know in the comments section here for Podcast Answer Man, episode number 317. Again, that's podcastanswerman.com/371. But I do see that there was at least 124,111 people back in March who had signed a petition for it to continue going. But I don't know if the number was 700,000 or something like that, but I just thought it would have been in the millions. And if I know I'm wrong on the number, but it seemed like it was just in the hundreds of thousands. And that just seems like a really low number. But then all of a sudden it's like Leo said, oh, well, if that's it, then I can see why they killed it. And I guess so, because it's a huge company and they're looking at, keeping that up and running. And that really is a very small subset of what they're trying to reach with their products and services these days.
Yeah. I found a thing that said that at the time in March, one of the most popular RSS feeds was the CNN.com breaking news, and it had about 24 million subscribers. Now, that's not saying how many of those were in Google Reader, but that does show that, RSS isn't dead if 24 million people are using it.
Exactly.
So
I know that there are definitely millions, and and here's the deal with the RSS subscribers, you got to imagine a lot of that's coming off of Flipboard and all of those other services and all the other direct applications now. And of course, that's one of the things that I want to talk about is we were both using, you and I, Eric, we're both using iOS applications to subscribe to websites using our iPhone and iPad, but we were basically doing that through our Google Reader account, through the API. So what it allowed us to do is to go into google.com/reader to kind of manage what we're subscribed to. We could actually add new RSS feeds there, kind of collate them through different topics, like this is tech, this is family, this is business, this is health and fitness, and we could manage it all there on Google, and then we could just sign in with the application on our iPhone or our iPad, and we would be able to give our Google credentials, and it would bring that information in as it was already synced up on. Actually, it would sync it with our Google Reader account. And that's how I was pulling in my information. In fact, I was using an application on the iPhone called Reader, and it was REEDER for the iPhone. That's the one you were using as well, right?
Yes, and we should note that is actually free currently.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Nice. We were also using on our iPad the REEDER app for the iPad, which is not a universal app, and it actually had a different icon and functioned quite differently. And for some reason, I was able to use the iPhone Reader app and switch over to a new service. But the iPad app, for some reason, I even thought for a minute, it's like, wait a second, this is a completely different app altogether. And in a way it is, but it still had the same name on it. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for a long time, those two different apps, they're not universal. And so they were on different tracks as far as, what version they were on. And so since the iPhone version was out first, it was getting more attention. And they were working on updating the iPad app for a while there. On their blog, they actually said, when Google Reader closes on July 1st, what does that mean for Reader? Well, it's too early to have questions to all the answers to all the questions. But most importantly, that Reader would be getting major updates, but they won't all be ready for July 1st. So Reader for iPhone right now currently is ready for Feedbin, Feedly, Feed Wrangler, Fever, and then standalone, just drop an RSS feed into it itself if you want to do that.
And by the way, they did actually say in the application that dropping an RSS feed and managing it in your iPhone or iOS device is I think it's like in beta or something like that. It's in test phase. At least that's what I remember seeing in the app.
So the iPad version will be coming, and that I hope so because I like using that one. But for now, the only one that works as far as iOS goes, as far as what I'm using, I should say, is the version for the iPhone. Right.
Now, obviously, you can subscribe to some of your favorite content using some really fancy, graphical, beautiful looking layouts and stuff like that. The first one that comes to mind is that
Flipboard.
Flipboard, yeah. And, it's real pretty and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily the way my mind works. I'm a linear thinking guy. I like lists. And I like, to see a list of titles, and maybe it's just the way that I originally remember seeing everything. And, I just like to scan through a list and say, hey, swipe to the right and say, I've read this one, or I'm not, or mark this one as read because I'm not interested. And then seeing a title that grabs my attention and then clicking on it to read more. Whereas Flipboard kind of relies more on the image to catch my attention. And I kind of, when I'm in Flipboard, I'm not really paying attention too much to what the actual the headline is. Do you find that that's true for you, or is that different for you?
I will typically scan to see what's the headline, is it worth reading, and maybe skim into the first sentence or two just to make sure that I either know it's worthwhile or not.
Right. But do you do that with Flipboard? Do you look at the headlines in Flipboard?
I do.
Okay, good.
And the images.
Okay. So anyway, so you can still use Flipboard and stuff like that, and that is pulling everything off via RSS feeds as well. The one thing that I wanted, though, is I wanted to be able to maintain my same look and feel of managing feeds. Now, as soon as Google came out and announced that they were shutting down on July 1st, a lot of other services say, hey, we're here to pick up the slack. And by the way, do you remember the old days of Net Vibes?
I do.
I wonder if they're still around and kicking. I haven't even looked at them in a long time. But anyway, a lot of services came up, and one service seemed to rise to the occasion quicker and faster than anyone else, and even promised and said, listen, Google said that we can even create an API that pretty much looks and mimics exactly like what they're doing. And something to that effect. And they said, listen, we are building basically our version of the Google Reader API. And if you move over to us, and in fact, if you transition over to us now, we'll import all your stuff, and come July 1st, it will be, you won't even notice any difference. And so I read that. I went over and I signed up for a Feedly account, and the big difference between Feedly, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, But it seems like Feedly, certainly they have an API. They store everything server side. That's really great. I like that, just like Google did. But as far as their interface, I can't just go to feedly.com and manage my stuff. Is that true?
Huh.
I'm going there.
I just deleted some feeds yesterday through Feedly.
All right. So I am actually going into Feedly right now because
you can add content.
Because and you know what? It looks like I may be wrong because I just signed in and here's my Feedly. So maybe they changed this since those days back, because it does actually see. Yeah. Okay. You know what? This is actually, I believe, new since I signed in, because before, when I went to Feedly, if I remember correctly, it prompted me to install a Google extension or a plugin to run Feedly. And I'm like, I don't want to install a plugin. If I want to go to the web and do it, I want to do it via the web. And now I'm actually on Feedly. It's actually cloud.feedly.com, but they did actually create this, and now I can hit add, and I can enter a URL, a topic. It is just like, it's got a cleaner interface.
So back in March when Google announced, and Feedly and everybody else was like, me, try me. I tried them and instantly said, I'm going this way. I don't care about Google Reader anymore.
Yeah.
I thought it was already better.
Yeah. So
and they fixed any issues there were. So.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it now, and the web version of this is reminiscent of the basics of Google Reader, and it works. Now, surprisingly, I actually set everything up via the Feedly apps. So they actually have a Feedly app for the iPad and iOS and your iPhone and stuff like that. But anyway, I signed up and went in and created everything on the Feedly app because I didn't know that they had created this nice looking web version. And I was managing things there, and I was thinking, this is a little bit of a cumbersome process to manage everything through this app because it's so graphical. It tries to be a little bit more like a Flipboard, if you will, or one of those other fancy, more image-based workflows and Reader and stuff like that. But now that I see this web version, this kind of it's like Google who?
Yep.
So anyway, the question is here's the deal. There's some people who have, by the way, there are many third-party iOS applications and I'm sure Android applications out there that were RSS readers, some paid for, many free, that only had APIs to Google. And when the Google Reader shut down, they didn't make any plans to update. In fact, there are many applications out there that are just kind of dead in the water. They won't do anything, including, I think, Reader for Reeder for the iPad. So my fear is that there's going to be a lot of people out there who will just say, you know what, I'm not going to bother switching over to Feedly, which, by the way, is a very easy process, especially with the new website. But I'm not going to bother switching over to Feedly or another service. I'm just going to rely on Twitter and Facebook for my news updates. The most important stuff rises to the top. Do you have any thoughts on that, Eric?
Yes, and this is partially why I wrote what I wrote in that email. Was I suddenly started to call into question, well, what am I doing with my RSS reader anyway? Am I really going? One, I can acknowledge and confess I was going there way too often. And so it was like, well, what am I using it for anyway? Am I looking to make sure I don't miss, when we create that can't live without content, we hope somebody makes sure that they can't live without it and they have a way to make sure they catch it. Well, when it comes to podcasts, obviously that's, your podcast catcher of choice where you subscribe, whether that's mobile or iTunes or what have you. But when it comes to, blogs or websites or whatever, how do you make sure? And so I started to think, well, you know what? I'm going to start trimming. And I know you have way fewer. You have 2 feeds?
I think I'm actually up to 5, but yeah.
Oh, 5. Do you want to know how many I have right now after I've trimmed?
How many?
83.
Wow. That's nuts.
Not all of them are always active, I would say probably about half of those are ones where they don't post often, but when they do, I don't want to miss it.
Yeah.
And so I have this as a mechanism, as a backup for that. But yeah, it's like, well, say somebody that I really like blogs once a week. I have options to subscribe to their content a couple of different ways. One, I can follow them on Twitter and hope I see it. I can follow them on. I can be on follow them or be a friend of theirs on Facebook and hope I see it, or I can subscribe to their blog posts via email, and I'll most likely see it the best way that way. Or I can throw it in here, and I've decided that
Or throw it in here. What's throw it in here?
To subscribe to it via RSS in a reader.
Okay.
And by doing it that way, which is my preferred method, I then read it on my terms when I want to go check it out versus getting it thrown at me in the midst of communication in an email newsletter. And I also then have have this as a hub of those things. And it's like, okay, so for example, I have a folder in Reader called Tribes, and I have, so for example, let me give you this as an example. Podcast Answer Man, when it comes out, is subscribed to in that folder because I want to read the show notes for the show and then go and make a comment.
Nice.
So that's something that actually podcasters may not actually be thinking about is sometimes if you have really good show notes for your audio content, somebody may subscribe to you via a textual RSS subscription model just so they know that your show came out and they can go read your show notes and then comment on the show notes and maybe play it while they listen or what have you. So
I like that.
So yeah, I've got maybe 15 certain tribes that I consider myself to be a part of that are in that folder. And so yeah, Podcast Answer Man would be one of them. And then that way I will never not know that a show came out or that a post came out that I want to make sure I go interact with. So for example, Michael Hyatt's blog is in there.
Yep.
And a few others that I want to make sure I don't miss a post, and that once I read the post in there, I click through and go and then comment.
Nice. So obviously you're not going to say, you know what, I can just rely on my friends to float the most important stories up to the top for me.
I think it can be done to a certain extent, but again, you're not going to see everything. If you've prioritized, what you want to see, you will. But
right,
you're that's almost too much trust on my part of my friends to not taste wise, but visibility wise.
Yeah, and here's my thinking on that mindset. And number one, I never feel like I'm going to be able to keep up with everything. That is simply impossible. Which is, by the way, the reason why I'm not subscribed to 80 different blogs. But here's what I've done is I used to be subscribed to like 30 or 40, which is a lot for me because I'm very picky about the content that I consume. I heard a long time ago, I don't know who said this quote, but and you guys can quote me here and say, leaders create content, followers consume it. So I want to make sure that I'm always I want to spend more time creating content than I do consuming content. And that's just a little personal philosophy that I have. I want to be out there creating stuff. And if I'm going to consume it, I want to find a way to put that into my creation process. So if I am consuming something valuable, I want to find a way that I can actually take that, share it in a way that is relevant to me and my audience, and say, this is what I think about it. Kind of like episode 316. Last week I found a video and I consumed that Alan Watts video, and last week I did an entire podcast episode on what do I desire. And I had a lot of fun with it. But, a lot of people will just read it or will consume that content, think about it, and go on with their day. But actually, they'll, instead of thinking about, how can I take this? How can I apply it? How can I wrap my mind? Now, how can I take what I've learned or what I'm processing, and how can I share it with others that it might benefit them? Rather than going through that process, they just move on to the next video, and then to the next video, and then to the next article, and then to the next news update, and then to this. And so their life is filled with consuming content, and it's not, they're really doing very little than just taking it in for entertainment value. So
yeah, exactly. And that was one of the things that I was suffering from in terms of productivity. As I'm learning about productivity, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm spending way too much consuming time-wise, and I should be creating.
So back in the day when I was actually subscribed to a lot of feeds, I found myself subscribed to Mashable, to Gizmodo, Engadget, Mac Rumors, Apple Insider, and all of those different tech blogs and stuff like that to keep me up on the latest in technology. Technology is a big thing for me. Obviously, I want to be able to share some of the most important technology tools and tips and tricks and how we can implement some of this latest stuff in the things that we're doing and growing our business and brands and getting the word about who we are and what we do, right? That's this is important stuff. So what I realized though is I found over time that really everything is I'm reading 5 different versions of the same story.
Right.
And I really don't need that. And so I found for me, when it comes to technology, there are only 2 sources of RSS information that I really feel like I want to make sure that I at least see the headline of everything they publish. And if I see the headline of everything they publish, I will probably be up to date with about 90% of anything that is relevant to me in technology. And those 2 sources are Mashable and MacStories.net. So MacStories.net is it's just a one-man operation, I believe.
Yeah. I really like the way they write and what they report on and how they do it.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that I've like I said, I used to subscribe to Mac Rumors and Apple Insider and stuff like that. And the things that MacStories.net does not share in his blog or whoever it is, the other stuff shows up on Mashable. And yeah, there are times when Mashable will cover a story that's also covered on MacStories.net. But what I find is that MacStories.net gives a little bit more of a personalized approach. This is how I feel about the story, whereas it's more of a journalistic approach from Mashable. But Mashable gives me the most of the information. So really, the only 2 RSS feeds that I see every single title, and I don't actually read every title. Sometimes I'll scan through the list. Like I might be 2 days behind, and there's like 85 stories that have been posted in the last 2 days. I literally will scan through, and my eyes have been trained to pick out certain keywords that might jump out to me. And I ignore all the entertainment stories. Kanye West did this on Twitter. Whatever. Who cares what Kanye West did on Twitter? None of that stuff really pulls out, and I mark those as read. But occasionally I'll see something Yahoo's giving away Flickr, those kind of things. It's like, oh, wow. And I don't want to wait until somebody else filters that up to the top. Mashable is reporting on it now. They're pretty up to date. I want to read what they've got, and I want to make a decision, and I kind of want to get out there with my thoughts and opinions, and I want to be the one who's bringing the information to others.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's why I think that RSS feeds are here to stay, at least for me, and I'm thankful for services like Feedly and stuff like that. So Eric and I are both using. Actually, have you? So are you still using Reader?
I am. Now, one of the things that I realized, here's why it was, there was a couple phases. The first was, ooh, I like this better than Google Reader. 2 was, oh, I'm checking this way too often. 2, completely not looking at RSS at all. I declared bankruptcy a few different times, especially because I was on vacation and I'm coming out of the tail end of an extended version of that. And suddenly started to look here, I'm checking maybe once or twice. That's probably being generous. Once a day at most.
Right.
Just to see. And I'm still looking to trim stuff out of there. But yeah, I still want to use it as my catch-all, make sure I don't miss out on a certain handful of people's content that are specifically blogs and other things like that.
Awesome.
So I'm using Reader for iOS or for for iPhone right now because I still like that. On the iPad, I've switched over to Feedly's own app because I've kind of tailored that to look good. And that was enjoyable. Like I went through and looked at all the stuff I'd starred because I thought, ooh, that's a good one. I want to read that. And I went back and I was like, oh, this is enjoyable. I like sitting here flipping through this and reading on the iPad.
Yep.
So
very cool. Well, we just wanted to bring that up here as a social media segment. I know that this is relevant. Sometimes I wonder, why do I feel like I need to explain why we're talking about this on Podcast Answer Man? But yeah, I do. Deal with me. Deal with it, because that's what I do. But I have to ask myself, why are we talking about this in a social media segment? Number one, social media, because we're sharing a lot of information in social ways. I consider podcasting to be a form of social media. As well as sharing it on our social networks like Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm oftentimes, if a story is really something intriguing, I will share it out in social media. But also, or actually social networks, I should say. But also for us as content creators, where do you go to get stories about your industry? Whether you're talking about wooden boats, personal finance, politics, sports, or whatever it may be, we can all do well by subscribing to a small subset of very up-to-date, current reporting blogs and news sites on the web that have RSS. And if we subscribe to them, it can really help us generate valuable content for us to share. And it's not just taking the articles and reading them and then just regurgitating it, although you could do that as long as you're given proper source and stuff like that. But I think the real value is when we can take a story and we can relate it to maybe our own personal story and our own experiences and give commentary on that and say whether or not we agree or disagree with the person writing the articles and sharing why we do and really having a stance on it and using our position that we have within our communities to influence the people in our niche with the message that we feel is important enough to influence them on. And that's why I love to stay up to date with certain stories and technology tips and things like that, because I think this is all valuable. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. Eric, I certainly appreciate you, my friend, and thank you for coming and having this conversation with me.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, my friends, that is going to wrap it up for this episode of Podcast Answer Man. RSS feeds, Google Reader. I do miss Google Reader, but you know what? Feedly, I'm warming up to you. I hope you enjoyed today's social media segment with my good friend Eric J. Fisher, and also thank you to Dennis, Josh, and Eric for calling in your questions on the voicemail feedback hotline. If you want to learn how you can submit your questions for Podcast Answer Man, you can head over to podcastanswerman.com/feedback. That's right, podcastanswerman.com/feedback. Just please know that I'm currently got about 40 or 50 other questions in the queue, but I don't always record or play them in the order that they come in. I actually play them in the order that I kind of sort and sift through them and feel like, yeah, I'll answer this one today. So go ahead and give us a call. You can, again, the phone number and all the various ways that you can learn how to provide your questions for Podcast Answer Man at podcastanswerman.com/feedback. I just also ask that you do one question per call. One question per call, and we'll see if we can't get you covered here in a future episode. Real fast, thank you to those of you who have been using my Bluehost affiliate link. Oh my goodness. I wonder if I can even do this in the 2 minutes that are left. Let's try it. Thank you to the folks behind OnlineIncomeBible.com, ProjectManPodcast.com, GreekWordForWisdom.com, StepGolfer.com, GlobalNomadicLeadership.com, TheOverwhelmedBrain.com, PracticalTacticalPodcast.com, ATerribleHusband.com, and TheMidpackPodcast.com. What is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of you within the last 3 weeks. 9 of you have set up Bluehost Bluehost hosting accounts using my affiliate link, and I can't thank you enough for doing so. If you want my thoughts on Bluehost and hosting outside of shared hosting and who I'm using for hosting today because I've outgrown shared hosting, all of that information can be found at podcastanswerman.com/hosting. And one more reminder, if you want to see that video that shows you how I record these episodes, that proven podcast workflow, again, that link is podcastanswerman.com/podcast-workflow. And this next Monday, July 22nd, launches our next Podcasting A to Z course. I've already filled up the 20 spots that I need, but if you want to get in last minute, there's still a little bit of time. I've got a little bit of room, a little wiggle room that I can fit you in. PodcastingA2Z.com.
Helping you to get the thing you do to the next level. Podcast Answer Man.